and welcome to the 3CL Foundation's Conversation Series. I'm your host, Patricia Malia, and since Australia introduced its groundbreaking media legislation in 2025, the world has been watching, and governments everywhere are now racing to regulate platforms to protect users, especially minors, from navigating effects of the online world. But this week, the UK announced a trial of social media bans, digital curfews and time limits, while elsewhere, Meta has been hit with 2 court judgments in New Mexico, where it has been ordered to pay $375 million after being found liable in misleading consumers about the safety of its platforms, enabling harm, including child sexual exploitation against its users, as well as a addiction case in LA brought by a young woman suing Meta and Google's YouTube for addicting her from her youth, as she put forward, and they awarded $4.5 million in damages. Snap and TikTok were also defendants in that case, but settled out of court. And this is actually highlighting a possible turning point now in social media and how we're all feeling about it. But here in Malta, we're slightly different because Malta has actually got the highest use of Facebook, 82% in Europe, mainly for use for the news. So today, what we're doing is we're going to unpack and have a conversation about Malta's green paper on social media, what it might be missing, how we can make it better, what the real impact would be, and the various issues. And to help me unpack this today, I have 3 fabulous guests. I have Dr. Luciane Zamit, who is a resident academic lecturer here at the University of Malta's Faculty of Education. Luciane is an expert in ethics, digital behaviour, and promoting responsible technology use. In addition to leading projects on AI ethics, digital trust, she serves on various national and international bodies, including Oxford's AIEOU, which is so hard to say, can I just say, the European Digital Hub for digital ethics as well, and also our own Commonwealth Centre for Connected Learning here at the 3CL. I also have Annabelle Cuff, Research Support Officer at the Faculty of Social Wellbeing. Annabelle's work includes publications spanning academic articles, reports and studies focusing on a range of issues, including community development and education. And your areas of interest cover organisational change and community engagement, as well as important social issues. The other thing is you have 3 children within the ban age group from 11 to 16. And so as a parent, you're navigating this digital world daily. And finally, but certainly by no means least, we have Nikki Azopardi, who is head of early years at San Anton School, as well as the programme leader, I believe, on the trailblazing initiative at San Anton called Unplug, Play and Grow, as well as being a parent yourself, Nikki. But you see this on a daily basis, which is why I think it's really interesting to have your perspective in terms of how the digital world is affecting kids' concentration, their behaviours, etc. Now, we're all mums, we're 4 mums, and we're of a particular age group. So I decided I would do a bit of investigating before today to get the other side of the story. And as such, I had quite a few conversations with my cohort of students here in the University of Malta, as well as at a family dinner with 12 to 19-year-olds. And there was quite an age gap. But the consensus was actually clear among all of the people I spoke to in Gen Z, and even some millennials and boomers, was that we're viewing it incorrectly. And we're not actually fully understanding which social media platforms young people use and what they're using them for. So according to my intelligence, this is what they say. So Facebook is for dinosaurs, like me. Now, I don't use Facebook. I'm technically hip, but it's for dinosaurs and businesses. Snapchat apparently is for girls taking selfies and doing beauty reels. Instagram is more for art and photos. The older Gen Z do use Instagram for messaging and having conversations, but the younger Gen Zs do not, and the alphas are in no way interested at all. Discord is where everybody spends their time online chatting and within their various networks and their various communities. TikTok is only for laughs and entertainment on the move. As for AI images, and you'd be interested in this, Luciane, AI images are apparently so obvious when they're used that they don't feel like they're being duped by AI images. Algorithms were a curious one because algorithms, the younger ones were less interested or knowledgeable about how they worked, but the older ones in the Gen Z cohort just felt that's part of life now and reluctantly accepted them. And additionally, and I thought this was quite interesting, was that this generation formed friendships online, and that's where their network of people are. So they found it very unfair that that was going to be targeted in any form of ban. Some agreed with the ban, but I thought that was going to be very unfair because some of them are using it quite responsibly. And finally, in terms of media and digital literacy, which I think is really important because the government also produced a digital education policy recently, they found the media and digital literacy education a joke. Eye-rolling, it's not relevant in terms of their real-term life usage. And I just thought that was interesting. They kind of felt that we're the academics, we're the older ones, and we really don't know what's going on. So, Luciane, that's what the users think. And I know you do a lot of work in this area. Are we out of step with what's actually happening?
Yeah, I mean, what you've been explaining is very much what we see in schools. Young people are using social media. They use it in different ways, different platforms. The platforms that they use depend on their age, their social group, changes from time to time. So it's very, very complex. And so it's not that we're getting it wrong. It's just that it's so complex. We're trying to figure out something which is, it's not our world. It's their world.
True, it is their word. Now, China has implemented very strict regulations recently in terms of online gaming. So kids are, only allowed 1 hour, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to play, and they have to give a real name identification. So they've put in something. Europe also has a lot of, policies out there. We have a Digital Services Act with key measures such as parental consent, verifications. Germany have addictive design bans. There's all of these things are actually currently there. But I'm kind of wondering, should we go wider? So, for example, should social media reform also include online gaming platforms? Should it include mobile gaming apps, messaging apps, even like Discord, if they're all on Discord now and they're not on Facebook? So this is kind of forming part of their social network. And is that what we should be looking at? Are we just too focused on the scrolling, the doom scrolling, and I don't mean it's in any disrespect, we keep talking about this mental health issue, but we're not understanding how that's affecting them in all their platforms. And I'm wondering, do we need to go wider on it? So, Annabelle, you're a mum. You're seeing this and you're in social well-being. What's your talk or your thoughts on it?
What I find is that it's such a fast-moving target. It's very hard to hit, especially with online gaming. My kids are playing one game and they'll talk to me about it and, go on and on about Minecraft. Then 2 weeks later, I'll ask a question about Minecraft and they'll go, oh, no, I don't play that anymore. Nice. So sometimes I find it's hard to keep up, especially with the games. Messaging is maybe more consistent. They tend to be on one platform. All the friends are there. So migrating a whole group to another platform, there has to be a good reason for it. Okay. And I think the bans would be a reason for them to migrate.
So like they're doing for Discord now with Roblox?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think, Nikki?
I would move away from the word ban first and foremost and speak about restrictions.
Okay.
Just like we restrict the use of alcohol, gambling, driving, voting, it's more of a restriction. And I think then you can restrict certain things and not others, possibly.
Okay.
And I would also add that education is key in everything. We need to educate. We need to educate parents, us dinosaurs. We need to educate the kids because it is a reality, just like Luciane mentioned.
So therefore, in terms of restrictions and monitoring, how do you think those restrictions should then take place? I'll come back to you, Nikki, but how do you think those restrictions should take place, Luciane? Because ethics is kind of your field, and ethically, how do you think we should do that?
Well, that's a difficult one because, as he said, there are so many different platforms. They're all being used in different ways. So, what do you restrict? How? So, I think that's what the white paper, what the green paper is trying to do. Actually, understand what people are doing, what the different stakeholders think. So it's not simple.
Okay, Annabelle, if somebody was going to restrict your kids, what would you want? Would you want their face recognition? Would you want their ID number? How do you think?
I think what they found in England when they tried to introduce that was that they had to repeal it because people were, there was so much protest and it wasn't working. And especially with things like passwords. I know my kids get around passwords. We had passwords on Netflix. They all had their own profile. But they're cleverer than we are, so they get around them. I've never figured out how, but they do. So
They do. They really do get around everything.
They're better at this than we are. So perhaps something not too invasive, not where you have to give, every detail and blood count and, that's too much.
Okay.
But yes, some verification, maybe just facial, I don't know. It's so hard to regulate. But I think, it would be great to have something.
So when you look at, say, addictive design, that's another area that we have to talk about. It also does apply to gaming and the imagery and the unrealistic perceptions, because you mentioned your kids that play games, and this fantasy versus reality, the constant validation that they're in, which affects their mental health and their perceptions, really does affect them. And it's harmful content, on some of these games. And then we have deepfake, we've AI, we've all of these things. And it's funny you mentioned them getting around it, because I heard an interview with Dr. Natasha Tard, who is attached to Unplug, Play, Grow at San Anton. And she said that 70% of children are able to get around the parental protection we're already putting in. So it just seems bizarre that they're able to get around it. We're trying our best. I mean, what do we do in relation to this, Nikki?
This is where I think parents need help. This is where the government comes in and legislates. So, parents can even explain to their children, this is law, we can't break the law. And so this is where I feel that the government needs to intervene and legislate within the age bracket that has been mentioned in the Green Paper, possibly a little later, maybe they mention. Sometimes they mention 13, sometimes it's 15. 15 is a crucial age. They're all sitting for their maths. Do we want to let our kids free on social media at that particular point? It's also a question worth, raising here.
Okay. And Luciane, what do you think about this? We're coming back to that ethics question again about legislation, and they're getting around it all the time. They're smarter than the rest of us.
Yes, but I think. To add to what Nikki was saying, the parents need help, because parents don't know how to put on all these safeguards and these guardrails. So schools have a big responsibility to teach students about the digital world.
Yeah.
Schools are doing this, even though the kids sometimes feel that it's not what they need. But
like SPHE, they all roll their eyes, don't they?
But I think also what schools are doing is that they're engaging parents, which is very
really
important.
Good. That's really important.
Because we have to get to the parents.
And Luciane, AI is the other aspect of all of this. I mean, the kids I talk to, the young people I talk to are like, AI, what are you talking about? Where does AI fit? Like, it's such a broad thing, AI. We have different forms of AI. So where does that fit into this?
I think it's embedded in everything, really. Because we're talking about the social media reform, and we're not talking about AI.
Should it be treated separately?
It is separate because it's AI is much more than social media. But AI is embedded in social media. So if they're on social media, the algorithms dictate what they're seeing. The deepfakes are all AI-generated. So we cannot really talk about social media without talking about AI anymore. However, AI needs probably its own regulation, and that is what the EU AI Act is doing. But we need to have a different conversation about that, because it's much bigger.
Okay. Now,
so for example, I'm really worried about AI chatbots, something that we haven't really been talking much about.
That's a podcast on its own.
Yeah, we know that children are using them, and they could be very harmful, and there are no guardrails.
Yes, that is actually a worry. But we talk about AI and we talk about parents, and I'm going to come to something that's a little bit sensitive in a minute. But let's just talk about parents for a second. So in the real world context, digital parenting has just shifted all boundaries. We don't know whether we're coming or going. And you guys are dealing with this daily in education and research. Now, San Anton has a fantastic program. I just think it's a wonderful program. Unplug, Play and Grow. And that was a parent-led initiative, if I'm correct.
Yes.
So, Nikki, can you tell us a little bit about this in terms of the digital parenting situation?
So at San Anton, we have parent focus groups for each of the sectors, the 3 sectors. And I lead the earlier sector and this parents focus group, which you mentioned Dr. Natasha Todd is on this focus group. And together with all the rest of the parents on this team, we last year, before any green papers, before anything, so we started discussing social media, the use of smartphones, and we decided to launch this initiative. It started off as an in-house initiative to try and encourage other parents within the community to delay giving their children smartphones so kids could play. We wanted to protect childhood. So for our kids who are 7, age 7, to encourage them to play when they go on play dates, to be outdoors instead of being on their phones. And so we launched this petition to encourage parents to sign this pact saying that they would delay giving their children a smartphone. The point was so that even parents and children don't feel that pressure. If the rest of the children in my child's class, for example, don't have a smartphone, then I can feel safe that I'm sending my child to another house for a play date, and they're not going to be on their phones, but they're going to play. So together, the parents would agree, and that would make it easier for parents. So that is how it all started. Then it sort of took a life of its own because it's something that started being discussed locally and also internationally.
And I'm curious because are parents and kids really sticking to it though? I mean, what happens when, your older brother has a phone and then you're on the bus and there's phones, and how do you navigate that?
We can't really monitor.
Okay.
I mean, some parents signed it in the hope that they would manage. Some parents are definitely. The point was really to start the conversation going. So parents would, discuss this and possibly all be on the same page. It's like, giving our kids a curfew. My child won't say, because all my friends are allowed.
Absolutely, yeah.
But no, we all agreed as parents, and you're all home by 10, for example. So this is what we wanted, to get the conversation going, to try and, literally protect childhood.
Annabelle, I'm going to come to you on this. Are we asking too much of parents? I mean, it's an impossible job. You got 3.
Yes,
Yeah, in this age frame. And do you feel that parents have the right level of tools and knowledge? We're all about educating the kids in digital literacy and media literacy, and that's great. But what about the parents and the older generation? Do you feel that as a parent you have enough knowledge on this?
I'm pretty sure I don't. I know when I have problems with my phone, I've done something to it. I will ask my eldest son because he's the best person for the job. He knows more than me, more than anybody else in the family. Yeah. So yes, they do know more than us. We are trying to educate. I feel we're always chasing behind. We're always slightly behind. Yeah. I try to keep up. What I do find with giving them devices or allowing them to use devices, it also depends on their characters. So my eldest was into, around COVID, got into Fortnite and gaming, and it was the way he kept up in touch with his friends. And then once the bans were lifted and, we were back outside, he started going out and he's into meeting his friends in person. Okay. But he's a little bit older. He's on the border between Gen Z, Gen Alpha, I would say. Okay. My 2 younger are Gen Alpha, and you can see there's a difference. They're a lot more connected. They're a lot more. It's natural in a way that it's not natural to me. And the personality then comes into it. So my daughter will have something on in the background, but she'll be doing her crafts and potions and whatever she does. My son, no, though. My middle son, no. He's talked to his friends and he's not so interested in going out. So it's a character thing as well.
I do think you're right in that, because when I was talking to my nephews and even other students here, they were like, well, it really depends on the individual, But in saying that, I also feel that parents are a little bit aloof or misunderstanding or lost would be a good way. So, Lucienne, you're very involved in education and different programs. Do you think there is a need or a possibility that we could have things that actually educate that we should roll that out on a government way and have a policy for it?
I think the beauty of this initiative is that it's parent-led. You cannot really mandate something like that. It's something that the schools and the parents themselves felt like, this would be a good idea for us. And I think what's important is that different schools are doing different things. So it started the conversation. And for example, so incidentally, I'm also a parent. And I'm a board member of another independent school, San Andrea. And what we did was we started talking to parents, delivering talks with parents, children, and teachers. And Professor Vince Marmara, who's also a board member, he's conducting a study at the moment with parents about their views of smartphones, the children's use of smartphones and social media. So what we're trying to do is figure out what the parents think. Now, we don't have the findings are not out yet, but we've talked to parents, and they really feel the need for this. They are really perplexed. They don't know what to do, how to control their children's social media use. So we feel that, their pain.
But I'm wondering, you're both private schools, so is it easier to do that in a private school than to have that in all public schools? And if they were going to do it, like what would the government need to do to roll that out into a public school policy?
I mean, I really wouldn't differentiate here between the independent sector or the non-state, church, government. I think it's all about the school. As Lucian said, the parents within the school. This was a parent-driven initiative. On our end, we're more than happy to share this initiative with other schools. We approached other schools. We shared this with all the heads in the church school sector. So, happy to share our resources and whatever. So really and truly, it's about, sharing what we have. This is for the benefit of all our children nationwide. It's not about our school or our sector. Our children are going to meet with children from different schools when they go to the playground, when they go to extracurricular activities. So it's really, something that I think we should look at holistically. It did start this actual initiative, but as Lucian also said, other initiatives are happening in other schools, and we also had a conference at our school. We invited even people from outside. One of our board members, Professor Alexei Dingley, shared his pearls of wisdom with our parents and whoever wished to in this conference at school, together with Dr. Natasha Todd and our school chaplain, Father Jean Govet, who's also quite
John.
Exactly. And together they, shared what the situation is at the moment and how we could help. We don't have all the answers. It's so dynamic, it's so fast changing, but we're more than happy to share all our resources with anyone who asks us.
I'm going to kind of jump forward a little bit because I'm conscious of time. We've a lot to cover, but we're talking about parents. Now, parents don't seem to know sometimes how social media works themselves. And teenagers just are not the only ones that are posting online. So I want to talk about something a little bit sensitive, which is that of sharenting. Okay? So if we're going to bring in a social media ban or whatever legislation or whatever they decide to do, it's very focused on Gen Z and kids. But it's not actually focusing on what parents are doing online. And I think parents don't seem to, and actually it's not that I think, it's a fact, that parents don't know that 50% of their images are used in criminal paedophilia, that they're posting online on Facebook. And they're innocent Facebook pages. Countries like France have now incorporated legislation with the Children's Image Rights Law 2024, and countries like Ireland have now done quite an impactful campaign, Pause Before You Post, to show parents how their images are actually going. So I'm wondering, should the regulations, any bans, any regulations, should they also regulate parents and what parents can post and how parents are using their online platforms? Why are we always picking on the kids? What do you think? You're all parents. Did you know that 50% of images of kids are being used in paedophilia? I mean, who would like to? Annabelle, what would you think?
Well, obviously, this is very worrying because, to be fair, I found that the way the kids use social media is not the way we use it. We would post on Facebook or Instagram. They do stories. I barely use stories, but they do stories because the image goes after a bit. The digital footprint remains, but the story goes. But we've heard of Grok, where there've been a number of in various countries, a number of cases brought against it because it's been used to undress women and children. What can be done, though? How can this be policed? So, can you stop schools from having social media? I love seeing my kids at school. I want to know what they're doing. Can you keep it safe? I don't know. I don't have any answers to these questions.
So you don't think there should be legislation or any form of restriction on what parents can put online of their kids?
I think...
Or schools?
Well, I think it should be done in conjunction with, so going up, up levels, in conjunction with the people who own these platforms. They have a responsibility too. If your tool, which is great at generating AI images, that's the good side of it. But if it's being used for this, you have to regulate it. There's your responsibility as well. And go after the people who are asking the AI to do these things.
Okay.
But how do you do that? I don't know.
Okay. What about Luciana? What do you think?
I feel like this is a bit of victim blaming here.
Oh, no. I don't mean to victim blaming.
No, but, why not regulate the social media platforms?
I do think they need to be regulated, but
parents are, it's a bit of a cultural thing.
Okay.
Parents are proud of their kids. They want to show their milestones, their achievements. It's something which, parents like doing. So... can we really blame parents if these images are being used for something else?
But that's like a child that's like a teenager putting up a picture as well. They like doing it. So who then is covered under what regulations and what bans? It's kind of a blurred narrative. And if I live in Malta, so I literally see, parents taking pictures of, mothers taking pictures of their daughters posing in certain ways on the beach and uploading that onto whatever platform. And then you see girls taking pictures of their friends on the beach, uploading that to a platform. And there's no agency in how those pictures might be used. And that's my thing. Not my thing, but it's just a point that, should we look at how we are, as parents, putting our children online? If we're asking children to behave a certain way, then why are we not leading by example by behaving? And you said earlier, Annabelle, about, if there's legislation, then we will have to say, well, it's the law, we can't do it. And that's where I'm coming from. If it's the law, we won't do it. And we will think a little bit more before we possibly do it. So that's kind of what I mean. I mean, Nikki, schools use them on Facebook pages, use kids' pictures on their Facebook pages, and that puts a lot of pressure on parents to sign that form. As I mentioned to you earlier, I refused to sign that form and I got the brunt end of the stick for it. And I know parents that have had to sign that form because they didn't want their kid to be left out of having their kid's face on the school Facebook page. That's another pressure. No different than, oh, well, little Timmy is using his mobile phone. Can I have one too? So where do schools go with that then? Should you guys be regulated as well and not be?
I mean, if we get to the point where there's regulation, obviously we would follow the regulations. But all schools use this social media platforms it's part of sharing of good practice. So there are advantages to it, even when it comes to marketing, the school. And so I totally understand where you're coming from. But like you felt, there's an option. There's an out clause. If you feel that you don't want your child, you are not... you are not obliged to. If you feel the pressure because of other parents or, your own child asking you, no, I want to be in the photos, then obviously that's a conversation that every family will have. What worries me is that a lot of parents, so putting that aside, a lot of parents don't realize that what they are seeing on their own social media is not what their children are seeing. So I might be scrolling on TikTok and my algorithm feeds me, I don't know, diet or menopause. That's what I'm interested in at the moment. But But when it comes to teenagers, if it's boys, there's porn. If it's girls, it's,
Beauty.
certain images, beauty products. So that worries me even more than the sort of safer, simpler images of groups of children in an activity, wonderful activity at school on a social media page, which is run by the school, very highly monitored.
Okay, no, that's okay. I'm just going to go into say, we talk about this monitoring and the bans and where we're going to go. And the implementation is going to be the tricky bit. I think we all agree the implementation is going to be the nightmare for everybody in some ways. But I heard the Australian e-safety commissioner in an interview recently, and she put it beautifully. And she said that in Australia, swimming pools must be gated for safety. And I've lived in Australia, and that is true. And waters with sharks, or potentially have predators, have nets in them. That's true. That's a fact. In Australia, they do it automatically. Kids are taught how to put sun lotion on in little school, because that's part of life. It's part of the social fabric of life. And she was saying how the new laws that they have put in should be viewed is in the exact same way, that we are social beings, that this is just part of how we have to live in society. We need protectors and protection, and that's how it is. And I just thought it was a really simple way of putting it. But I kind of feel like implementing such a reform here, if you think about Facebook is the town square in Malta. Everything happens on Facebook. They may say it's for dinosaurs, but whether you want to book a restaurant or business is on Facebook, a family is on Facebook, I think it's going to be an awful lot trickier here, just the way Maltese society works. Maybe you agree with me or don't agree with me. And it also takes a long time for legislation to go into place. An awful long time for actual legislation and policies. So if there is a ban, what age would you recommend and what form would you recommend? Because by the time it comes about, your kids will all be older anyway. So what age? I'm going to ask you, Lucienne.
I think for me, the natural cutoff point would be between secondary school and sixth form. So it's like around 15, 16.
Okay.
Because, at that age, young people are still very young. They need more protection.
Yes.
And 16 for me is, a cutoff. They get more privileges when they're 16. Of course, would it be easy? It will not be easy, especially for the ones who are already using social media. And in fact, I would advocate for a staged approach. So the ones who are already using it at 15,
Okay, leave them out.
Leave them out of it. Just like I don't know if any of you remember when the seat belts when they became mandatory. I was young at the time, but I remember it. It did not come in force from one day to another. First, there was a lot of education. New cars started coming with seat belts. The old ones got retrofitted, little by little. But there was a lot of awareness campaigns, a lot of education. So it did not come in from one day to another.
Okay.
And at some point, people realized that it was, for their own good.
A good thing. Nikki, what do you think?
I think now very recently, we have statistics showing us the harms of social media on such young children. I mean, they're not cognitively ready to, it affects us if we see something negative, let alone a 13-year-old child at the end of the day. So I think I would agree with Lucienne that maybe when we end their compulsory schooling, before they start sixth form, I think that would be a really good age. And because really and truly, I deal with a lot of young children, young families. We're overprotecting the children in many areas, but we're underprotecting them online. So,
okay, Annabelle, what about you?
I think it would be great if you could enforce it. But, for example, I know my son tells me openly that he's got Instagram accounts that I don't know of. There's the one I'm allowed to see, and he tells me that's on my other Instagram account. And I do ask, what's on that Instagram account? And he goes, I just, don't want you commenting on everything I do. So they do find ways around them. And I think this is where, what Lucienne said, you do have to have a lot constant conversations everywhere. This is how social media works. Repetitive messages coming through. Well, we need to take that on a bit as well and have all sorts of campaigns in school, education in school, education to parents. I think then that will sink in. And it's not, when they're taught in school about media safety and they all roll their eyes. If it's everywhere, it sort of sinks in,
yes,
whether you want to or not.
Because I know we are risking kind of a shift to possibly unregulated platforms. So, for example, you just said your son has, another Instagram account. You don't know about it. And, if they're not on one platform, they're going to go to another platform that mommy and daddy can't access. For example, my 12-year-old nephew is a Roblox fanatic. I had a whole conversation with him. I was enlightened by him the other day about Roblox. And he just said, well, there is ID, Auntie Tricia, but we don't have to bother with that because we've all shifted to Discord. And I was like, what's that now? So I then got educated on Discord and what they're doing on Discord. And they literally have their Discord on as they're playing Roblox. And they're all talking to each other on Discord. And everybody they're playing with on Roblox, even people they don't know on Roblox, they're on the same Discord. So, are we looking at how do we do that? How do we regulate somebody like... So now you're regulating Roblox because they're playing physically on Roblox. But are we regulating Discord because they're actually talking on the Discord as they're playing Roblox?
Wasn't there something that came out, I think, a couple of years ago, that they were using Google Documents, shared documents, to chat? Yeah. So do you want to regulate that as well? I think it's the parents' role in this is to talk to their children all the time and try and build that trust from a young age, not when they're teenagers. That has to start before. And, just like my son told me, at least I know he's got other Instagram accounts. I will never get to see them, but just try and keep that conversation going.
Be curious and try and find them.
Oh, yes. I'd love to.
Surely you know how to find them. See, an Irish mother would hunt them down. We'd find them. We definitely would find them. But if you think about the Instagram accounts, and the images and things, when it comes to the images, and Lucian, you mentioned early deepfakes. So we're into that whole remit now of deepfakes and imagery. And I do come back to legislation on this again. Because in Ireland, we have what's called Coco's Law. And it's a very strong piece of legislation. And it criminalises the sharing of or threatening to share intimate images of a person without their consent, and I'm reading this exactly what it is, with or without intent to cause harm to the victim. The law also makes it an offence to send an intimate image purporting or claiming to be of another person, even if that image is not actually them. Okay, and it is implemented in Ireland and has been quite successful. And I'm wondering, should Malta start taking this AI and images online an awful lot more seriously, legislatively, and actually enforcing sentences, etc.? Like, are we at that point now where we really need to start pulling up our socks? Luciana, this is your area.
I know they're going to implement, they're discussing a law based on image-based abuse using AI. Because yes, it is an issue. Our laws are outdated in that regard. So we do have laws against image-based abuse, but not AI-generated ones. But there's going to be some specific legislation on that, which I think is very important because kids are using them. Kids are using these apps, these nudify apps, like you mentioned. And they're still very young. They don't quite know, the harm that they will cause. And so, we really need to start thinking about that.
And in terms of that, it takes legislation a really, really long time to happen. And there's also that thing, I think, in Malta too, where people kind of raise an eyebrow sometimes at legislation and kind of go, yeah, but will it really be enforced? Is that kind of we're going to have a big problem with that here? We talk about how people get around the protections. Then we're raising our eyebrows and, well, no one's really going to enforce that. Do you feel that is going to be a big, huge problem here in Malta? Our attitude towards the law, legislation, and the fact that our kids know how to get around us like there seems to be a lot of talk, and it takes a long time for the talk to come into policy. So will there be like a collective like you've had in San Anton where everybody pulls together? Or do you think there's going to be this pushback throughout society for bans or whatever?
I imagine there will be some pushback by some parents who possibly don't understand the harms. I mean, when I was younger, alcohol, cigarettes, they were sort of something, everyone enjoyed. Now we know, statistically, we know the harms and there are restrictions. So I think that, again, education is key. We need to have a very widespread national campaign on, like the drinking and driving campaign. I think it did even have an effect this new year. The police really put up a really good campaign, and then after New Year they said there were no fatalities, thankfully, around New Year. I think if we do have this educational campaign on a national level and really explain to parents the harms, then I think it will be something positive, obviously coupled with the legislation that hopefully won't take forever.
It's interesting that you mentioned education, because at 3CL we're all about the education and lifelong learning and things like that. And I kind of feel that we need to shift our mentality. We are now digital citizens. Yes. We're not just citizens of Malta anymore. We are digital citizens. And Luciana, I'm going to ask you, do you think there should be a national campaign to teach older generations, and I know I mentioned it earlier, but to teach older generations media literacy, considering we are actually all now digital citizens? And would that kind of alter the playing field of what governments want to put into place and how we are behaving as society? I mean, we have classes for mature students all the time. Why are we not focusing on that, or should we be focusing on that?
Yeah, I think it's urgent actually, because the older generation is the one who's mostly falling for scams, financial scams.
True.
So, they're online. Their lives are mediated online, so they log on to their e-health, whatever. So they need. I mean, when I think of my parents, they're not very tech savvy, but they need to be, because they cannot do anything without their phone. They cannot make an appointment. They cannot talk to their whatever local council sometimes. It's all digitally mediated. And unlike children who are constantly being bombarded with messages such as, this is not safe, you need to respect others online and all that, the older generation might not be getting these messages. They're, in their social media bubble, their Facebook most of the time.
They're in their little echo chamber, aren't they?
Yes, and I think though that generation, we're missing that generation, because we're focusing a lot on the kids, which is fine because they're vulnerable. But in a way, the older generation is also vulnerable, and we're not thinking of them like that because they're adults. So, you're not going to restrict their social media,
right? But
you can educate them.
Yeah, I do think, Annabelle. What do you? I think it's a great idea to do that. What do you?
Yes,
think?
I agree. When I think of my mother, who's 80, she's just begun to use Facebook, and sometimes she'll tell me, "Oh, I don't know how to do that." But the ways to reach them are not just through Facebook, because they watch a lot more TV than we do. They listen to the radio more than we do. I listen to it if I'm driving, but not so much at home, maybe. So there's other ways to get to them, to educate them about social media than just on social media. So I would agree with Luciana. It's urgent. It needs to be done, because their word wasn't so digital. I mean, even mine was less digital than my children's, and they don't understand it so much.
And it's interesting you mentioned the digital world, because you had said to me previously about the digital footprint, and how people don't understand their digital footprint. Young people don't understand their digital footprint, and actually neither do older people understand their digital footprint. So I think that's really important, that in the education, that concept of what you say and where it goes is quite important. But we talk about the bans, and am I right that we would all agree that a sweeping ban is probably not the way to go, that we're more looking at education, media literacy to understand our online lives. Am I correct, Nikki? Am I correct? That's what
So I agree.
the consensus?
Education is key, and possibly what Luciane said, a staggered approach to legislating for our youth.
When you say a staggered approach, what would you think would be the thing to focus on first? I know I'm putting you on
I think I would focus on certain applications first, and social media, definitely for a certain age, who are our young teens are just not cognitively ready to deal with that, to navigate that well. They don't think of consequences. It's here and now. It's instant gratification, and it's affecting so many other areas in their life, their attention, so on and so forth. I mean, we see it at school all the time. So yes, I would target smartphones for a certain age and certain social media applications for up to compulsory age schooling, basically.
Would you agree with that, Annabelle? Would
I
you say
would
the same?
love that.
Spoken like a true digital parent.
Oh, yes. Well, we've tried to delay our children's giving them a smartphone for as long as we could. And with my eldest son, it was a little bit easier. He got it a little bit later. My middle son wasn't interested. We just had to give him one because now, every now and then he goes out to meet his friends or he goes to after-school activities, and I want to be able to reach him. My daughter got it really early compared to the boys because all her friends already had a phone and they were all chatting, and she was being left out.
Okay.
So it would be great if nobody has a phone, then nobody feels the need to have it. But as soon as one or two people start getting it, then they're more connected to each other, and they all want to be connected. That's what they care about. Teenagers care more about their peers. That's where their life is.
Yeah.
So
What about you, Luciane?
I think we need to make a difference between technology and social media. Because sometimes when we talk about these bans, people sort of take them to extremes. We do not want to ban technology for the kids. Technology is very important. They need to know how to use it. But social media platforms, or most of them, are not spaces for children. They were never meant to be for children.
Yeah.
They were spaces for adults, which children are using. So I think we need to find a balance somehow. Because young people need to know how to use technology, and we cannot ban them from talking to each other online. But talking to each other through a safer platform, like Microsoft Teams, which they all use at school, I think that's fine. Now, can they bully each other online through Microsoft Teams? Yes. But we're not going to ban that, are we?
That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
I mean, you will never eliminate bullying.
Yeah. No.
But I have a bit of an issue with my kids being on a social media platform through which other adults can contact them.
Yes.
That, as a parent, I have an issue with.
Yeah.
And I do not want my 12-year-old to be in that position.
Yeah.
Now, if all of her friends are on it, it places me in a very difficult position as a parent.
Yes, it does.
So I wouldn't mind some, legislation to help us parents. But the legislation cannot be a blanket ban. I think that should be very, 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 it's obvious for me, but it seems to be not that obvious for everyone.
Okay. I wasn't originally going to talk about this, but you brought it up earlier, and I really wanted to talk about it. So, the chatbots. Will never even have a robotic Hoover, never mind a chatbot. I talk enough for myself. The chatbots, how do we regulate chatbots? Like, they're giving them advice. Yeah. I was with somebody yesterday who was talking to his glasses. Like, it was bizarre. So how are we going to regulate that? That's a whole other beast, isn't it?
We still don't know how to regulate social media. I don't think we're at that point yet. We still need to know how children are using them, if there's anything wrong with the way they're using them, whether there are any guardrails. Okay. I think that's a new conversation, to be honest. But it's one that we should be having as soon as possible, because children are already using them.
And Luciane, I'm going to come back to you because I know you do a lot of work within the EU on policy and you know, this is kind of your area. But are there already policies in place for chatbots within various frameworks, or is this all new and we have to start from scratch?
It's all very new. We are assuming that there are guardrails, that the companies themselves are putting guardrails in. Okay. But the companies are saying, this is for adults, it's not for kids. I mean...
So they're selling it as an adult toy?
Exactly, and it is an adult toy.
Okay.
So, toy, well, it's not a toy, but... so what some companies are doing, they're saying, listen, if you're an adult and you want to nudify another person on Grok, for example, that's fine, you're an adult. But what if a kid is using it? Right. You know, so that's why I said earlier, we don't want to victim blame, because the responsibility actually is the platform. The platform has a lot of responsibility. Now, as parents, we have some responsibility towards our kids, but I cannot be monitoring my kid all the time.
Okay.
And they might be using these platforms for something which is very legitimate, like studying.
True. There is a lot of legitimate use.
Yes. So it's very, very complicated. Again, it's not about legislation, it's about education. I think first we need to educate. First we need to understand what's happening. Yeah. We need to educate them. We need to educate ourselves. Before we do all that, we cannot really talk about legislation and banning and all that.
But haven't we been doing a lot of talking and a lot of work in schools and trying to educate? And haven't we been doing an awful lot of that already? At which point do we stop talking and start doing? Because it seems like there's a lot of policies in place, like EU policies. There's a lot of organisations, there's schools doing a lot of stuff. We're all talking. But at which point do we say, right, that's the line, now we need to do it? Or do we just keep talking because the tech is so far ahead of us, we can't catch up. And if we keep trying to educate ourselves on all the new tech, we're never going to get anywhere. I mean, Nikki, you're in education. Is there a point where we go, okay, we just need the legislation now and we'll catch up later?
I think we do need legislation to help us. I mean, we educate kids about a number of things, about alcohol, drugs. In PSCD, they have all these campaigns that have been going on for years, but there's still legislation to help. So we do educate our kids, but we don't say in the process, here's a bottle of vodka, and figure out the harms alone. We say no till you're 17, and these are more recent legislation. When I was younger, we could go to clubs, drink, and there was never really any hard ban. Today, kids will say, I'm not going to bother going to Parcheville because anyway, they're not going to let me in before I'm 17. And that, to me as a parent, is great because I don't even have to argue with my children. So I think they go hand in hand. So the education and the legislation go hand in hand to protect our children, basically.
Okay. Well, I think we have just about run out of time. But there is no doubt that the online world has certainly fostered a global addiction. I think we can all agree with that across multiple generations, not just Gen Zs. We're all scrolling and certainly has far-reaching consequences. Most do tend to use the technology responsibly, and I do think that's important to say. Lots of young people do use it very responsibly. And the various platforms do have different kind of ways to network and everything. So I think it's important because sometimes we can always be just tunnel visioned in one thing. Tech giants, Luciane, you're absolutely correct. They do need to be held responsible. But I don't think they're the only ones, maybe, that need to be held responsible. We have to have our own sense of autonomy and agency in what we are all doing. It's going to be a very interesting conversation in Malta. I'm not sure how many people attended the various public occasions they had for this green paper, but it certainly is a conversation that is going to be ongoing. And it's moving faster than we can keep up, unfortunately. So, Dr. Luciane, thank you very much. Annabelle, Nikki, thank you so much, all of you, for being here. And as always, thank you to Campus FM 103.7 and to my cameraman and production editor, Alex Gallia, and to our listeners. Thank you for joining us. And you can find out all the links and papers and legislation we have talked about in the bio, so you can click below when this podcast goes to air. So thank you. Until next time, take it easy. Bye-bye.